I never planned to go to war with my homeowners association. Like most people, I moved into Maplewood Estates for 3 reasons. The houses were affordable, the streets were quiet, and the brochure promised tasteful landscaping standards. I figured that meant no rusted cars on lawns and maybe a limit on inflatable Santas. Reasonable stuff. What I didn't know was that tasteful landscaping standards was HOA code for Linda Watkins will control your soul. Linda was the HOA president. She was in her late 50s, always dressed like she was about to run for city council, and she walked the neighborhood every morning at exactly 6:30 a.m. with a clipboard and a smug little power stride. Her blonde bob never moved. Not in wind, not in rain, not in the presence of joy. And unfortunately for me, Linda hated gnomes. It started innocently enough. After my divorce, I needed something, anything, that made the house feel less empty. So I bought a garden gnome. Nothing wild. Just a small, smiling guy with a red hat, holding a mushroom. I named him Gerald. Gerald sat near my mailbox, minding his business, radiating good vibes. 2 days later, I got a warning notice. Remove immediately. I laughed. Surely this was a mistake. I emailed the HOA. Hi, I believe there's been an error. The ornament is a standard garden gnome, similar to one sold at Home Depot. Please advise. Linda replied within 6 minutes. Garden gnomes are not in keeping with the community aesthetic. Community aesthetic. We had 3 plastic flamingos on Oak Drive and a full-size wooden windmill on Pine. But fine. I moved Gerald closer to the porch, technically off the lawn. The next morning, Gerald was gone. At first, I thought maybe someone stole him. Kids, maybe. But then I found him. In my trash can. Cracked. Decapitated. Placed gently on top of the garbage bags like a warning from the mob. I stared at my trash can for a long time. Something inside me shifted. Not rage, yet, but a quiet, dangerous curiosity. So, I bought another gnome. This one was taller. A little smug-looking. Blue hat. Arms crossed. I named him Bernard. I placed Bernard inside a planter, right next to my front door. Technically decor. Protected. Legal. That afternoon, Linda knocked on my door. She smiled the way sharks smile. Good afternoon, she said. We need to talk about your choices. I leaned against the doorframe. You mean Bernard? Her eye twitched. I mean the continued violations. He's not on the lawn, I said. And he's not offensive. He's just judging you silently. That night, Bernard disappeared too. This time I didn't find him in the trash. I found pieces of him scattered behind the community dumpster. That's when I realized something very important. This wasn't about rules. This was personal. And Linda Watkins had just declared war on the wrong homeowner. Because I wasn't going to stop buying gnomes. I was going to build one. And when I was done, Linda would never forget it. After Bernard's remains were discovered behind the community dumpster like a tiny ceramic crime scene, I did what any reasonable adult would do. I read the HOA bylaws. All 47 pages of them. Twice. At 2 a.m., fueled by cold pizza and spite. And here's the thing. There was nothing in there about garden gnomes. Not one line. Not even a footnote. There were rules about fence heights, mailbox colors, even acceptable shades of mulch. Apparently autumn chestnut and harvest brown are very different, but gnomes. Nothing. Which meant Linda wasn't enforcing rules. She was enforcing vibes. The next morning I noticed something new. A black SUV parked across the street. Engine running. Windows tinted. Inside it, Linda. Clipboard in hand. Binoculars. I waved. She didn't wave back. That was the moment I understood Maplewood Estates wasn't a neighborhood, it was a surveillance state. So, I decided to conduct an experiment. I bought a gnome-adjacent object. A small stone statue of a frog wearing a hat. Not technically a gnome. Just gnome-coated. I placed him on my porch. 24 hours passed. Nothing. No warning. No decapitation. Interesting. The next day, I added a second frog. this one holding a tiny shovel. Still nothing. On day 3, I added a mushroom. At 6:42 a.m., Linda appeared at my door. She didn't knock. She tapped. With one finger, like the villain in a movie. That mushroom, she said, pointing, is unacceptable. I raised an eyebrow. It's a fungus. It's suggestive, she replied. Suggestive of what, Linda? A whimsical forest lifestyle. I asked her to show me the rule. She tightened her jaw, flipped her clipboard dramatically, and said the words every HOA tyrant loves. It falls under discretionary authority. Ah, yes. The final boss clause. I removed the mushroom. That night, the frogs vanished. All of them. No broken pieces. No remains. Just gone. That's when it clicked. Linda wasn't destroying things randomly. She was collecting them. And once I realized that, the anger finally hit. I wasn't mad about the gnomes. I was mad about the control. Linda wanted obedience. Quiet lawns. Neutral joy. No personality that hadn't been pre-approved by her and whatever demon possessed her clipboard. So I stopped reacting. No emails. No plants. No ornaments. For 2 weeks, my yard was painfully HOA perfect. Trimmed hedges. Approved mulch. No joy. Linda relaxed. I saw her stop checking my house first on her morning walks. She started targeting new victims. Poor Mrs. Hernandez got written up for aggressive wind chimes. And while Linda thought she'd won, I started building. It began in my garage. I ordered supplies slowly. Casually. Nothing suspicious. Concrete mix. Rebar. Weatherproof paint. A cheap welding kit I barely knew how to use, and several YouTube tutorials later still barely knew how to use. The design came to me one night in a dream. A gnome. But not a cute one. A monument. Tall. Unmissable. Technically compliant. Because here's the loophole Linda never considered. HOA rules limit ornaments. They do not limit art installations. And my cousin, bless his chaotic soul, happened to be a part-time art professor who owed me a favor. By the time Linda realized what I was doing, it was already too late. If you've never seen an HOA president panic, I highly recommend it. It's subtle at first, tight smiles, faster clipboard flips, a sudden obsession with emergency meetings. Linda started hovering around my house again. Not aggressively. Not yet. More like nervously. She'd slow her morning walk. Pretend to check her phone. Glance toward my garage, where the door stayed shut but the sounds leaked out. Metal clinking, power tools whining. The occasional creative profanity. One morning, she finally snapped. She marched up my driveway and demanded, "What are you building?" I smiled sweetly. Art. Her face froze. Art. Yes, I said. An art installation. That requires approval. Actually, I replied, pulling out a neatly highlighted copy of the bylaws. Only ornamental lawn decor requires approval. Art installations fall under homeowner expression, provided they are non-offensive and structurally safe. I watched her read the page. Her lips moved. Her eyes narrowed. And for the first time since I met Linda Watkins, she had nothing to say. She walked away without another word. That afternoon, every HOA board member received an email titled, Urgent, Emergency HOA Meeting. Art concerns. I was invited. So was my cousin Mark, the art professor. Mark showed up in a black turtleneck and round glasses he only wore when he wanted to intimidate people with concepts. He brought a portfolio, printed statements, even a mock plaque description. Linda opened the meeting by glaring at me like I'd keyed her Lexus. "We are here," she said sharply, "to discuss a potential violation in progress." Mark leaned forward. "Actually, we're here to discuss a community enrichment opportunity." The room went silent. Mark launched into a 10-minute explanation of folk symbolism, suburban conformity, and reclaimed whimsy. He used phrases like post-domestic expression and hostile minimalism. No one understood him, which meant no one challenged him. Linda tried. She really did. "But how large is this installation?" she asked. Mark smiled. "Scale is relative." I slid over the permit application. It was real. City approved.
Signed.
Stamped. Linda's hands trembled as she held it. She knew. She absolutely knew. Whatever I was building, she couldn't stop it. The next week, the garage door finally opened.
Slowly.
Deliberately. The neighbors gathered. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Because standing there, unfinished but unmistakable, was the gnome. 7 feet tall. Concrete body. Reinforced steel frame. Arms crossed. Beard flowing like a marble philosopher. And the face. Neutral.
Calm.
Judging. Linda arrived 10 minutes later. She stared up at it, mouth slightly open. "You can't be serious," she whispered. I walked over, holding the small bronze plaque that would be mounted at its base. "I am," I said. "And wait until you read the title." She read it. Her face went red, then pale, then furious. The plaque read, "Observation of Authority, a study in vigilance, control, and unnecessary interference." Underneath, in smaller text, "Dedicated to community involvement." Linda turned to me slowly. "This is harassment," she hissed. "It's art," I replied. "And it's watching the street. Just like you." She stormed off. But I noticed something important as she left. She didn't write me up. She didn't threaten fines. She didn't call a lawyer. She went straight home.
And closed her blinds.
The morning after the gnome officially took its place on my lawn, Maplewood Estates woke up different. People walked slower. Dogs were walked twice past my house instead of once. Someone brought a lawn chair. Because 7 feet of concrete judgment tends to change the energy of a cul-de-sac. The best part, the gnome wasn't doing anything. It just stood there. Arms crossed. Chin lifted. Eyes carved at just the right angle, so it looked like it was always watching whoever happened to be breaking the rules at that exact moment. And, unfortunately for Linda Watkins, that was usually her. By noon, I had my first visitor. Mrs. Hernandez, yes, the wind chime victim, knocked on my door holding a plate of cookies. "I don't understand art," she said carefully, "but I understand revenge." She pointed at the gnome. "That thing is beautiful." By the end of the day, half the neighborhood had opinions. Group A, "This is hilarious." Finally, someone stood up to her. "My kids named it." Group B, "This will lower property values." "It's antagonistic." What if it inspires creativity? Linda, of course, was spiraling. She called an emergency board meeting. Again. This time, attendance was standing room only. Linda opened with a PowerPoint. Slide 1, a photo of the gnome. Slide 2, the same photo, zoomed in. Slide 3, the same photo, circled aggressively. "This," she said, voice shaking, "is a hostile structure." I raised my hand. "It's nonviolent." She ignored me. Board member Steve adjusted his glasses. "Technically, Linda, it meets all guidelines." Linda snapped her head toward him. "It's mocking me." Mark the art professor leaned back. Art often reflects the observer. The room moved. Linda lost control. She slammed her clipboard on the table. "I will not be disrespected by a statue." And that's when the neighborhood chose. Someone clapped. Then another. Then Mrs. Hernandez stood up and said, "You fined me $75 for enjoying wind." Applause erupted. Linda stared around the room, betrayed. The meeting ended with no action taken. She left early. That night, she sent me an email. Subject, formal notice. It was 3 paragraphs of legal-sounding nonsense that ended with, "We will pursue all available remedies." I replied with one sentence, "Please advise which bylaw I am violating." She never responded. 2 days later, the thing happened. I noticed Linda pacing her front yard, staring at the gnome through narrowed eyes. Then I realized why. I hadn't mentioned this part yet, because I wanted you to feel it the way she did. The gnome's eyes. They were hollow, and inside them were motion-activated LED lights. At dusk, as Linda stood there watching, the lights slowly turned on. Not bright, not flashing, just a soft, steady glow.
White.
Unblinking. Linda gasped. She marched across the street and screamed, "You did that on purpose." I smiled. "It represents awareness." She pointed at the eyes. "It's staring into my house. It's facing the street," I said. "You just happened to be in it." That night, Linda called the city. The police came. They inspected the gnome. They admired the craftsmanship. One officer took a selfie. They left. Linda stood in her driveway, shaking. And for the first time since this began, I felt a little bad. Just a little. Then I remembered Gerald. And Bernard. And every clipboard tap. And I went inside. Because tomorrow, Linda was going to do something desperate. And desperation makes people sloppy.